The Big Beautiful Bill just passed the Senate, and Ray Dalio, one of the most legendary investors out there, issued a final warning, because it is going to have a very serious implication on the national debt. And at the end of the day, it's the average American who is going to pay the national debt, who is going to pay the price for that. In fact, even prior to the Big Beautiful Bill, the United States was on unsustainable debt levels. It printed trillions of dollars back during the Great Recession, during the pandemic, and every crisis since then. And now it's supposed to be the period where the United States is going to pay off its debt. But it seems like with the Big Beautiful Bill, that's not happening. And according to the chairman of the Fed himself, the United States will never pay off its debts. So here in this video, let's try to figure out how the Big Beautiful Bill is supposed to solve the national debt problem and how it's going to impact you. The US is already on a trajectory of overspending. In fact, in the next 20 to 50 years, it seems like revenues will never catch up with the expenses of the US government, which means that the national debt is only going to worsen. But when you have so much debt, such as $37 trillion or any kind of debt, there are two ways to fix that problem. The first one is the hard, and the second one is an easy way. The hard way is the best way to solve any kind of a debt problem. Now, if you have ever been in debt, you know how to solve the problem. You work super hard, you save as much money as you can, and you pay off your debt until you bring your debt levels to sustainable levels. Let's say where 5 to 10% of your income shouldn't go on the interest payments. If it's more than that, you're in trouble. If you're making $50,000 and then $20,000 are simply interest payments, then you are in a serious problem. However, the United States will take the absolutely different path, and that's based on the Big Beautiful Bill and what exactly Donald Trump has said. The first way is to lower down the interest rates. When you lower down interest rate, the cost of servicing the debt is going to go down, and you're going to have winners on one side and losers on the other side. If you have borrowed, let's say $100,000 at 10% interest rate, then every year you have to make a $10,000 payment. But if we lower down the cost of servicing that debt from 10% to 5%, suddenly you only have to pay $5,000 to service that debt. Did you win out of this situation? Yes, but the person who lent you that money is a loser right now. He's making significantly less money than he used to in the past. Now imagine if he actually lent you the money in the beginning at 5% interest rate, but now he's going to simply make 1% interest rate. He is an absolute loser because he's not even going to make as much as inflation. The second way to solve the crisis with the debt is to weaken the currency, and that means that we are going to make the dollars much less valuable than they are right now. And again, just like any other circumstances, it is going to have a winner and it's going to have a loser. Now, if you look at the price of the gold over time, for example, back in 2000, it used to cost $269 per ounce. Today, it's around $3,400. Now, let's ask the question is that what exactly has happened to gold over time? Was it such a great investment that the price of gold has skyrocketed in such a short period of time? What actually happened is that the value of the dollar over this period of time has gone so down that the price of gold had to adjust to the new value of the dollar. Let me give you another example. Every single year you go to the grocery store and prices have increased. And every single year, even though that you make as much money as you used to in the past, you can buy less things. That's what we mean when the value of the dollar has gone down. But here is the catch. If you have borrowed $37 trillion in US dollars, suddenly you devalue the currency that you have today, it is also going to devalue the entire $37 trillion, which means that now it's much easier to pay off the $37 trillion. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's say that you borrowed $100,000 from your friend 30 years ago. Is it easier for you to pay that $100,000 in debt, assuming that there is no any kind of interest? Well, of course, yes. And who controls the value of the dollar? That's what the Fed and the government do. So if they can artificially devalue the value of the dollar, suddenly, even though that's $37 trillion, it is going to be a lot easier to pay. But there are going to be losers, the people who lend their money to the US government. And it's already happening. According to Donald Trump himself, that the dollar is too valuable and it's overvalued. That's why we have to devalue it. And over the last 6 months, it has already gone down by 13%, at least compared to euro. Devaluing the dollar has a benefit because it's going to make American exports much more cheaper. If you produce something in America and then you sell it, let's say in China or Japan, they're going to buy it with their own local currencies. But to buy it, they have to buy American dollars. So if you're going to devalue the dollar, suddenly buying stuff from America is going to be much cheaper, which means that demand for American goods are going to increase, which means that America is going to export much more goods and services, which means that the economy is going to grow over time. So there is a logic behind it if you're trying to grow the economy or the GDP by focusing on exports alone. On the other side, it is going to make Americans much weaker. Now, you're still going to make the exact same $100,000. You have money in your bank account, in your savings account, let's say $100,000 or $200,000, and that's a lot of money. But now those $200,000 can buy a lot less things because in relation to foreign currencies, the US dollar just got significantly weaker. Do you see the analogy over here? And the US every year imports around $4 trillion in goods and services. And most of the things have some kind of parts that are being imported from the rest of the world, which means that inflation in the US is going to keep growing because you simply devalue the currency, simply because buying things from other countries will become more expensive. But there is another implication of lowering interest rates and weakening the currency. When you lower down the cost of debt, that means that the people who loan their money are suddenly going to get much lower returns out of their investments. When you're going to go and buy a car and you want to take money from the bank, which means that you're borrowing that debt, if you're borrowing that debt from somewhere, right? And the bank is borrowing it from someone else, which means that from one side, we have investors who keep their money in the bank. On the other side, we have people who are borrowing that money from the bank. If there are no people on the other side who are ready to loan their money to the bank and to you, then you have no place to take that money from. Does that make sense? If you want to borrow money from me and I'm not willing to give you money or lend you money, then you won't have that money at all, or vice versa. That's why if lenders on one side are not going to get enough decent returns on their investments, then they are not going to lend their money to the banks, which means that banks will not have the money to lend it to you, which means that the entire financial system could collapse. Of course, that is an exaggeration and hypothetical example of how things could possibly be. But if you're a lender and if you're loaning money and you're not getting even enough returns that is above inflation rate, then what's the point of lending that money to the bank or to anyone else? I would rather take that money and invest it somewhere else that is going to provide me with a decent return that is higher than inflation. So if you want lending to be accessible, then the rate that the lenders are going to get out of their investments should be at least slightly higher than the rate of inflation. So who are the people who are loaning their money to the US government? Of course, at number one, we have the Federal Reserve. But the Fed cannot consistently keep lending money to the US government because every time that the Fed lends it, it creates direct inflation because that's direct printing of money, which is why the government has to borrow that money from somewhere else. And that somewhere else could possibly be, for example, foreign governments such as Japan, China, and the UK, who are the major holders of the US debt. And if they don't get enough return on their investments, they will no longer keep loaning their money to the US government. Do you see that it can create a problem for the US government in the future that they won't be able to borrow money from them since they won't be making enough returns and it won't make economic sense for them? Now, you simply have to ask yourself, would you loan your money to anybody that is extremely unprofitable, where they will manipulate the rates and they will artificially lower them down to benefit themselves and not benefit you at all? Of course, you won't do that. You would only loan your money to somebody you know that is going to be safe and profitable at the same time. Pension funds are also major lenders to the US government. So, for example, you have a social security trust fund that is investing in treasury bills. And the point of social security isn't to earn a profit for themselves, but rather it's a system to make sure that the seniors have a certain type of income for them to pay for day-to-day expenses. And social security works in such a way that they take the money from the people who are working and then they pay the seniors. But at the same time, they invest a portion of that money, and based on that interest, they can pay off the pensions. However, If you lower down the interest rates, then those pension funds are not going to earn enough in order to pay the pensions. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have like the entire social security system that has $1 trillion in assets, and they will invest in US Treasury bills. And now they're making 5% out of it. So 5% on $1 trillion is $50 billion, which means that every year they make $50 billion and they can pay off $50 billion in pension. Suddenly, if you lower down that from 5%, let's say to 1%, now the pension funds are only making 1%, which is $10 billion. So you cut their budget from $50 billion to $10 billion, which means that the pension funds won't have enough money to pay off the seniors, which can again collapse the system. So when you're solving the debt problem by lowering down the interest rates, you are disincentivizing the people to loan their money to the government of the United States. Like, why would you loan your money to the government of the US knowing that you're not going to get good returns? And that means that now the government will have to borrow money from somewhere else. And why would the government keep borrowing? Well, I told you that the government is already running a deficit, like a $2 trillion deficit that is going to grow. And because the government already has so much debt, it has no other option but to keep borrowing to keep paying off the interest on that debt. So if nobody is loaning you new debt, that means that you have to rely on the Fed. But when the Fed creates money and loans it to the government, that is direct inflation because it's directly printing money, which devalues the value of your money significantly much more, which means that you can buy significantly less things from now onwards. And that's why the United States from now onwards, by solving the debt crisis, by devaluing the dollar and reducing the interest rates, could mean that the US will put itself on a path where the United States enters a new era where inflation in the US will consistently be high. And you also have to understand how inflation is being measured. There are different strategies to measure inflation in such a way where it will still be like 2%, but the real inflation is significantly higher than that. Let me give you an example. When they count inflation and they tell you that inflation was like 2.4% or 2.5% last year, it doesn't mean that the prices of everything has gone up by 2.5%. It simply means that the prices of the selection of goods that they have chosen have grown by 2.4%. And that's why you see that house prices have grown by 40%, but then inflation is like 3%. How does that make sense? Well, it doesn't make sense because they don't have to tell you the real numbers. If you know the real numbers, then you won't actually believe them because you will find out how poor you actually got. And that's why it takes us to the next point, which is when you weaken the currency, it leads to higher asset prices. So you see prices of stocks, bonds, and real estate suddenly increase. It doesn't matter whether you're lowering down the interest rates or you're artificially weakening the currency, asset prices always rise. Now, the best example I can give you is probably 2020. Low interest rates, suddenly look at the stock market and it shoots to the roof. You look at the house prices, they shoot to the roof. You look at the bond prices, they shoot to the roof. A bond is, when you lower down interest rates, the yields on the bonds go down instantly. Now you have to pay a lower interest rate on these bonds. But the prices of those bonds instantly shoot to the roof and become much more expensive. Do you see the problem? And now ask yourself, who exactly suffers when asset prices start to rise? That is the average person who is not investing. That is the average person who is not in the markets. That is the person who is living paycheck to paycheck, or in the best case scenario, has some kind of real savings and bank account, which means that it doesn't matter what happens. At the end of the day, investors end up winning. You see, in 2020, when the Fed lowered down interest rates to almost 0%, everybody thought that, now investors are going to lose. Yes, the people who invested in government bonds expecting that they will get higher returns, these people have lost a lot of money. But the people who kept their money in real estate and the stock market, they saw astronomical returns. And 2020, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the best years for the stock market out there. And that's why they never tell you the real definition of inflation. So when I joined college and we had this subject called Economics 101, one of the things that they taught us is what is inflation. And what is inflation? A general increase in prices. But that's absolutely wrong. I realized that actually a few years after I graduated from college. The real inflation is a general decrease in the value of the dollar, because prices are staying the same pretty much all the time, at least for most of the things. But when the value of the dollar goes down, then prices must adjust to reflect the new value of the dollar. Let me give you another example. You see, over the last 50 years probably, globalization have grown so much that the price of things have gone down. So you're supposed to be able to buy more things with the exact same amount of money that you had, let's say 30 or 40 years ago. But that didn't happen. You can buy less things. A lot of things now being manufactured in different parts of the world at a fraction of the price. And because of these complicated supply chains, we can bring them to the US at a fraction of the price or any other corner of the world. And yet we don't see that. Prices are rising every single year regardless. So who are the winners and the losers? Winners are obviously going to be the people who are investing, the investors. These are the people who hold real estate, stocks, bonds, or even gold. Because every single time when the currency is being devalued, the value of those assets are going to rise whether you want that or not, whether you like that or not. On the other side, the biggest losers out of things is that are the people on a fixed income or with some kind of real savings in their bank account. Because from now onwards, their $100,000 income can buy a lot less things. Now, the best example I can give you is that the average price of a house would cost around 2 to 3 times of the average household income. Now, if you want to buy the exact same house with the average household income today, it would take you around 6 times of the exact same amount. What exactly has happened over the last 50 years? The answer is very simple. The value of the dollar has gone so down, but your income hasn't grown as much as the government is printing money, which means that you actually got significantly poorer compared to 1970s and 80s because your income hasn't grown as much. But asset prices on the other side rise so much. And that's why when they do the inflation numbers, they never include house prices in the inflation numbers. Because if they include them, then we are going to have consistently high inflation of at least 5 to 10%. And that's the best case scenario. If you actually get like the worst case scenario, it could be as high as 20%. And that's why it's very sad that people are not learning investing when they're in high school or at least in college. Because even if you get like the basics of investing when you're in high school and you start investing with as little as $100 a week or even a month when you were 18, yes, by the time you're 25 and 30, you will not be able to buy a Lamborghini or you won't be able to buy a mansion. But at least by the time you retire, you will retire with millions of dollars. And that's far better than what the government is guaranteeing you right now. And even that's not a guarantee. They're telling you that pay payroll tax for the next 40 to 50 years. And maybe if you're lucky, you will be receiving Social Security paychecks. But by the time you retire, you probably won't see those Social Security paychecks because they will start eliminating the number of people who will receive Social Security. That's a story for another video because the Social Security system is entirely collapsing. So if you're new into investing, I have made a fully animated course for free. The link to the video will be in the description of this video that you can take a look and watch. It's fully animated and it will give you at least the basic understanding of how the stock market works. But if you want to take it one step forward, then there is another link in the description of this video where you can work directly with us and become a professional investor. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one.